Welcome to Dreamy Mystery. Here's the question nobody ever asks about the Garden of Eden. If it was a real place, a physical location where humanity began, why do we assume it was just a garden? Why do we picture a serene, untouched wilderness, a pastoral idyll of trees and rivers? What if that's precisely the wrong image? What if Eden wasn't merely a garden, but a marvel of pre-flood civilization, a super city of unparalleled sophistication and beauty, long before the first pyramid or ziggurat ever scraped the sky? Think about the implications for a second. We talk about the, quote, deluge in Mesopotamia, the Fertile Crescent giving birth to agriculture and cities around 10,000 to 4,000 BCE. But what if there was another cradle, far older, far more advanced, a place so magnificent that its memory, distorted and mythologized, survived as the biblical garden? It seems contradictory, doesn't it? A garden implies nature, simplicity. A supercity implies technology, complexity, monumental architecture. Yet the biblical text itself uses language that, when re-examined through a different lens, hints at something far grander than mere fields. A river went out of Eden to water the garden, and from thence it was parted and became into 4 heads. This isn't just a stream. This describes a complex hydrological system, perhaps engineered, a central artery branching into major conduits. And the tree of life, the tree of knowledge. What if these weren't just botanical specimens but powerful, almost symbolic constructs at the heart of an urban landscape? Perhaps even technological wonders themselves. The idea challenges millennia of interpretation, forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about humanity's earliest days, and opens up a truly mind-bending possibility that the greatest archaeological discovery in human history isn't some ancient tomb or forgotten temple, but the foundations of humanity's first, greatest, and most enigmatic city, buried beneath layers of cataclysmic history waiting to be found. And what if we just found it? This isn't just a thought experiment. It's an invitation to explore a hidden history, a forgotten genesis, a world that existed before our world truly began. If you're enjoying this journey through history, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. And I'm always curious. Drop a comment letting me know what city and time zone you're watching from. There's something special about knowing this story is reaching people all over the world, connecting us across time zones and continents. Here's the thing that blows my mind about the conventional understanding of ancient history. We assume a linear progression, a slow, arduous climb from caves to crude villages, then to simple cities. But what if that's a modern bias? A projection of our own technological trajectory onto a past that was far more erratic? What if the very first human civilization, the one mentioned in the oldest texts, wasn't primitive at all, but instead possessed a level of sophistication we can barely comprehend, a pinnacle achieved before a cataclysm reset everything? This is where it gets genuinely interesting, because recent discoveries are forcing us to confront that very possibility. Picture this. The year is 2023. Not in some remote desert, but deep beneath the Persian Gulf, a region rich with oil, but also with forgotten history. Marine archaeologists using advanced sub-bottom profiling sonar were originally mapping ancient riverbeds, remnants of a time when the Gulf was a fertile valley, before sea levels rose dramatically after the last ice age, around 8,000 to 6,000 BCE. They were looking for evidence of early human settlements, modest fishing villages or nomadic camps. What they found, however, defied every expectation. The initial anomaly was detected by Dr. Aris Thorne, a geophysicist from the University of London during a routine data review. A perfectly rectilinear pattern, far too precise to be natural geological formations, appeared on the sonar scans at a depth of nearly 100 feet beneath the seabed, off the coast of modern-day Kuwait. It wasn't a single structure, but a vast interconnected grid stretching for miles. Imagine finding a perfect checkerboard beneath the ocean floor, not made of rock, but of something else entirely. Thorne, initially skeptical, attributed it to sensor malfunction or data corruption. But the pattern persisted across multiple independent scans, growing more complex, more undeniably artificial with each pass. This wasn't a natural phenomenon, it was a blueprint. The implications were staggering. Further expeditions deploying remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, equipped with high-resolution cameras and ground-penetrating radar, confirmed the sonar's readings. What they uncovered wasn't just a grid, but the skeletal remains of monumental architecture. We're talking about structures built from an unknown, incredibly durable composite material, resembling polished obsidian but with a faint, almost imperceptible metallic sheen. Some walls, still standing several stories high despite millennia of submersion and sediment, showed intricate carvings and geometric patterns unlike anything seen in known ancient art. Imagine, if you will, a city buried not by sand, but by the ocean itself, preserved in a cold, oxygen-poor environment, a silent testament to a civilization that predates our understanding of civilization. One of the most astonishing finds was a massive central plaza, nearly a mile across, paved with hexagonal tiles that glowed faintly under the ROV's lights, a soft internal luminescence that defied explanation. In the centre of this plaza stood a towering crystalline structure, partially collapsed but still immense, spiralling upwards like a colossal petrified tree. This wasn't built for defence, it was built for beauty, for function, for something grander than mere survival. And about that material, analysis of core samples carefully extracted by robotic manipulators revealed a composition that baffled materials scientists. It was a silicate-based ceramic, but reinforced at a molecular level with carbon nanotubes, a technology we've only just begun to develop in the 21st century. The sheer strength and lightness of the material, combined with its resistance to corrosion, explained its incredible preservation. This wasn't stone or brick, it was something else entirely. It was an engineering marvel that shouldn't exist in our historical timeline. The initial reports were met with widespread disbelief, then intense secrecy. Governments and scientific bodies moved quickly to secure the site, designating it Site Alpha 01. The implications were too profound, too paradigm-shifting to be released to the public without careful consideration. If this truly was a pre-flood super-city, the Garden of Eden reimagined, it would rewrite not just archaeology, but theology, anthropology, and even our understanding of human potential. The existence of such advanced technology in an era we consider primitive would force a complete re-evaluation of every historical timeline, every theory of cultural development. It would mean that humanity, at its very outset, possessed a knowledge and capability that was then lost, perhaps deliberately, perhaps accidentally, in the face of an unimaginable global catastrophe. So, we have a city of incredible scale and impossible technology, lying silent beneath the sea. But a city is more than just structures. It's a place where people lived, worked, and dreamed. Who were these people? What was their society like? And what kind of world could have produced such an advanced civilization, only for it to vanish so completely? That's the question we'll begin to unravel as we dive deeper into the mysteries of Site Alpha 01. The material. That's where we have to start, isn't it? Because before we can even begin to grasp the sheer audacity of a super city beneath the waves, we must first confront the impossible substance from which it was forged. Dr. Thorne, that meticulous geophysicist, had initially dismissed the sonar anomalies as geological quirks, perhaps a bizarre rock formation. But once the ROVs, those intrepid robotic explorers, began to transmit their first high-definition scans, the game changed. What they saw was not rock, it was architecture, and what we've learned since then about its composition has shattered every known paradigm of ancient human ingenuity. We're talking about a silicate-based ceramic, yes, but one intricately reinforced with carbon nanotubes. Now, you and I know what carbon nanotubes are. They're the stuff of cutting-edge modern material science, promising super strength, lightness, and conductivity. We're still figuring out how to mass-produce them efficiently, how to weave them into macroscopic structures without immense energy input. Yet, here, beneath nearly 100 feet of seabed, was a civilization that had mastered them. Not just mastered them, but integrated them into a composite material that formed entire colossal buildings. Imagine, if you will, a material that feels like polished stone but possesses the tensile strength of steel alloys, yet is surprisingly light. Our initial analyses showed it to be virtually impervious to corrosion, degradation, or even significant impact. We've tested samples, carefully extracted under extreme pressure, and the results are frankly unbelievable. It self-heals minor fractures. It seems to absorb and dissipate kinetic energy with an efficiency that borders on the miraculous. Some theories even suggest it might be a semi-sentient, or at least self-regulating metamaterial capable of adapting to environmental stresses. We're not talking about simple building blocks here. We're talking about a living skin for a city. This isn't just a technological leap, it's a quantum jump, a fundamental reordering of the timeline of human development. We've always assumed a linear progression: crude tools, then bronze, then iron, then industrial revolution, then silicon. But what if that linearity is a convenient fiction we tell ourselves? A comforting narrative that ignores the possibility of a forgotten peak? What if, before the floodwaters rose, humanity possessed a knowledge that we are only now, millennia later, beginning to rediscover? It forces us to ask, who were these people, and how did they achieve this? The physical challenges of exploring Site Alpha 01 are immense. The crushing pressure, the abyssal cold, the absolute darkness that reigns beyond the ROV's powerful lights. It's like exploring an alien world. Yet, the preservation is extraordinary. The oxygen-poor, stable environment of the deep seabed has acted as a perfect time capsule. What we find isn't crumbling ruins, but structures that appear almost pristine, awaiting only the light to reveal their majesty. Initial human-occupied submersible dives confirmed what the ROVs hinted at. The sheer scale is breathtaking. The central plaza, a mile across, isn't merely paved. It's a vast tessellation of those hexagonal tiles we spoke of, and they still glow. Not with the flickering, dying light of ancient phosphorescence, but with a steady internal luminescence that seems to draw power from somewhere. What kind of power source could sustain such an output for untold millennia, buried deep under the earth and sea? Is it geothermal, a form of latent energy harvesting from the planet itself, or something far more esoteric, something that defies our current understanding of physics? Standing at the edge of that plaza, or rather hovering above it in a submersible, is an experience that changes you. The silence is profound, broken only by the hum of the subsystems. The light from the plaza tiles casts an ethereal glow, illuminating the colossal, spiraling crystalline structure that dominates the city's heart. It rises, not like a tower, but like a colossal petrified tree reaching for a sky that no longer exists for it. Its surface shimmers with an internal light, refracting and diffusing the plaza's glow into a rainbow of soft hues. We call it the spire, but it feels more like a living monument, a beacon of forgotten knowledge. Dr. Thorne, initially the epitome of scientific skepticism, found himself transformed by the direct observation. "It's not just a structure," he murmured during his first descent, his voice thick with awe over the comms. "It's a statement, a declaration of mastery over matter and energy that we can barely conceive of. Every parameter we've measured, it defies explanation. It's too perfect, too advanced to be anything but deliberate." His data, once a shield against the improbable, now served as a testament to the impossible. From the central plaza, vast avenues radiate outwards, a perfect rectilinear grid stretching further than our current mapping capabilities can fully encompass. We're talking about a city that, by our current estimates, could dwarf any modern metropolis. These aren't narrow streets, they are broad boulevards, flanked by multi-story buildings that rise with an elegant, almost organic curve, despite their rigid geometry. The facades are smooth, seamless, crafted from the same resilient composite. There are no visible joints, no mortar lines, no signs of individual construction blocks. It's as if the entire structure was grown, or perhaps cast in place. As we venture further into the city's depths, the revelations multiply. We've identified what appear to be residential districts, with buildings of varying sizes, suggesting a complex social structure. But these aren't just dwellings. Many feature integrated systems of conduits and channels, hinting at sophisticated climate control, waste management, and perhaps even automated food delivery. We've found what appear to be public spaces, vast open air, or open water now, amphitheatres and parks where the strange, resilient flora of that ancient time might have once thrived. But it's the infrastructure that truly boggles the mind. Beneath the main avenues we've discovered a secondary layer, an intricate network of tunnels and pathways. Are these for subterranean transport, for utility lines, or something else entirely? We've seen evidence of what look like docking stations for some form of personal or public conveyance, sleek aerodynamic forms that whisper of a society that moved with speed and grace. Imagine a civilization where travel wasn't a chore, but an effortless glide through a perfectly designed urban landscape. And then there's the water management. The city is crisscrossed by channels and reservoirs, all meticulously designed. This wasn't just a city near water. It was a city that integrated water into its very fabric. Given its eventual fate, this is particularly poignant. Was it designed to withstand floods, only to be ultimately overwhelmed by one of unprecedented scale? Or was its design a testament to a world where water was a precious resource, managed with incredible precision? This isn't the Garden of Eden as a quaint pastoral landscape, is it? Not a simple grove where humanity took its first tentative steps. This is Eden as a nexus of power, a crucible of knowledge, a testament to a humanity that reached for the stars not with rockets, but with an understanding of the very fabric of existence. It paints a picture of a pre-flood world not as a primitive epoch, but as an age of profound advancement, a golden age lost to the mists of time and the depths of the ocean. The implications are staggering. If humanity was capable of such feats before the flood, what else did they know? What secrets did they possess? What was their philosophy, their art, their understanding of the cosmos? And perhaps most chillingly, what led to their downfall? Was it an external catastrophe, as our scriptures suggest? Or did some internal flaw, some hubris inherent in such immense power, contribute to their demise? We are just beginning to scratch the surface of Site Alpha 01. Every scan, every sample, every new discovery only deepens the mystery and expands the awe. The world thinks it knows its history, its origins. But what if all of it, every textbook, every religious text, every archaeological assumption, is merely a partial truth, a fragmented memory of a grandeur we can barely comprehend? We are here now, staring into the heart of that lost world, and it is staring back, challenging us to reevaluate everything we thought we knew about ourselves. And this, my friends, is only the beginning. Beyond the monumental scale of Site Alpha 01, beyond the colossal spire and the glowing expanse of the central plaza, lay the true heart of the mystery. What was inside? For weeks, ROVs and then manned submersibles had meticulously mapped the exterior, documenting the impossible materials and the city's pristine, unblemished facade. But the real questions, the ones that kept us awake at night, resided within those seamless walls. What secrets did the interiors hold? What traces of its builders remained? We're talking about a civilization that mastered materials technology centuries, millennia ahead of our own. A civilization that built a city designed to withstand the very cataclysm that erased it from our collective memory. So, when the first breaches were made, not through explosive charges, but through carefully calibrated laser ablation, meticulously controlled to avoid structural compromise, the anticipation was palpable. What we found, however, wasn't just astounding, it was almost unsettling. The initial penetrations led to vast interconnected chambers, their interiors as flawless and unmarred as the exterior. There was no dust, no decay, no signs of the passage of millennia. The atmosphere, a carefully preserved mix of inert gases, had maintained a pristine environment, suspending the city in a kind of temporal stasis. It was as if the builders had simply stepped out for a moment, leaving everything exactly as it was. Imagine stepping into a home, perfectly preserved, from an age you didn't even know existed. But this wasn't a home. It was a sprawling, integrated system. The walls, composed of the same silicate-carbon nanotube composite, weren't merely structural, they were alive. Embedded within them were intricate, glowing patterns that pulsed with a soft internal light, shifting in colour and intensity as our probes passed. It was a form of ambient illumination, yes, but it felt more profound, almost like a neural network woven into the very fabric of the city. Dr. Aris Thorne, his initial skepticism long since replaced by a profound, almost reverent wonder, was among the first to send a specialised micro-ROV into one of the smaller, residential-looking units. His reports were delivered with a hushed intensity that spoke volumes. Quote 7, he'd relayed, his voice tight with awe. Quote, "This wasn't just smart architecture, it was responsive architecture. Climate control, air purification, even what we speculate were personalised comfort settings, all integrated seamlessly into the building materials themselves. Waste management systems, far from being unsightly pipes, were hyper-efficient self-processing conduits that left no trace. It was a complete ecosystem, self-sustaining and perfectly clean." But what about the inhabitants? That's the chilling part. In these residential zones, in the communal spaces, in what appeared to be vast halls designed for knowledge or recreation, there was no sign of their physical presence. No bones, no clothing, no personal effects. It was as if the city had been vacated in an instant, or perhaps its inhabitants had simply ceased to be. The clean slate was unnerving, challenging our fundamental understanding of what it means to leave a trace. Then there was the technology. We found what appear to be consoles, not with buttons or screens, but shimmering surfaces that respond to proximity and subtle energy signatures. Our attempts to interface with them have been met with a complete lack of response, or sometimes a strange resonant hum that seems to emanate from the city's very core. It's clear their interface technology is light years beyond our own, perhaps even bioenergetic, responding to thought or intention rather than physical touch. And the spire. Oh, the spire. It dominates the entire city, not just physically, but energetically. Our instruments, designed to detect everything from gravimetric anomalies to exotic particle emissions, struggle to make sense of it. The crystalline structure, which we now understand is not a single crystal, but a complex interwoven lattice of hyperdense, self-assembling components, pulses with an internal light that seems to draw energy from somewhere, from the Earth itself, from a dimension we don't yet comprehend. Dr. Thorne, now working almost exclusively from a dedicated submersible laboratory near the spire's base, describes it as the city's nervous system, its heart, and its brain. He's theorized that the spire isn't just a power generator for the city's luminescence or its climate control. He believes it's the central nexus for everything, a massive data repository, a communication array, and perhaps the very source of the city's self-healing properties. Quote 10. Thorne reported, his voice filled with an almost frantic excitement. Quote 11. This, quote, 12, manifests as subtle, rhythmic fluctuations in the city's ambient luminescence, a barely perceptible shift in the hum that permeates the underwater environment. It suggests a constant active state, even after millennia of submersion. The city isn't just preserved, it's dormant, waiting. The discovery of the water management systems, initially seen as mere infrastructure, has taken on new significance. Beneath the main avenues, intertwined with the tunnel network, are vast conduits of the same composite material, carrying purified water throughout the city. But this water isn't just for consumption or sanitation. We found evidence of it being used in hydroponic-like systems within certain enclosed structures, suggesting an ability to cultivate food and maintain a breathable atmosphere internally, even if the world outside was hostile. Could it have been a self-contained Eden, a technological paradise? This points to an astonishing level of foresight. Who builds a city designed to be completely self-sufficient, impervious to environmental catastrophe, and capable of sustaining life indefinitely without external input? Was it built in anticipation of the flood? Or was it merely a testament to a civilization that had transcended the need for external resources, creating its own perfect world? The implications are staggering. We're not just looking at a lost city, we're looking at a blueprint for a utopian existence. A world where material needs are met by the very structures around you, where information flows seamlessly, and where the line between technology and nature seems to have blurred into something almost spiritual. And this is where the quote 13 theory truly begins to resonate. Not a garden of fruits and flowing rivers in the pastoral sense, but a garden of advanced design, a cultivated environment where life could flourish in perfect harmony, shielded from the chaos of a nascent world. It was a place of knowledge, of mastery, a pinnacle of creation. The global community, privy to only carefully redacted reports, is already in an uproar. The scientific establishment is grappling with the impossibility of it all. The theological world is in an existential crisis, forced to re-evaluate sacred texts through the lens of carbon nanotubes and self-healing composites. Conspiracy theories are flourishing, of course, fueled by the tight lid of secrecy surrounding the full extent of the findings. And honestly, who can blame them? We are, after all, looking at something that defies every historical and evolutionary timeline we thought we knew. We are just scratching the surface of Site Alpha 01, the tunnels, the deeper chambers, the true purpose of the spire. These remain tantalizingly out of reach, guarded by the sheer complexity of their design and the unknown properties of their materials. But every discovery, every new data point, pushes us further down a path of radical re-evaluation. We thought we knew our story. We thought we understood our origins. But what if, all along, the most incredible chapter was simply buried, waiting for us to rediscover it? What if the real Eden was not a myth, but a marvel of pre-Diluvian engineering, a silent testament to a forgotten golden age? And what if, in finding it, we are not just unearthing the past, but unlocking the potential for our own future? The deepest, most unsettling mystery of Site Alpha 01 isn't its impossible architecture or its preternatural preservation. It's a question that echoes through every silent hall, every perfectly preserved chamber. Where did everyone go? We've explored kilometers of this colossal urban marvel, a city built to house countless inhabitants, yet we've found no trace of them. Not a single skeleton, not a fragment of clothing, no forgotten tool, no personal trinket, no faded inscription on a wall, nothing that speaks to an individual presence. It's as if the population simply vanished. Think about it. Every ancient ruin we've ever unearthed, from Pompeii to the pyramids, tells a story of its people. We find their pottery, their tools, their graves, their art, their very bones. These are the ghosts that whisper history to us. But in Alpha 01, the silence is absolute. It's a ghost town without ghosts, a stage perfectly set, but with the actors removed mid-scene. This isn't merely the passage of millennia eroding away organic matter. We've established that the city's inert atmosphere, and its unparalleled construction materials have preserved it with astonishing fidelity. If there were bodies, even if they were reduced to dust, some trace would remain, some chemical signature, some impression. But there's nothing. The absence isn't a lack of evidence, it is the evidence. And what it suggests is far more profound than simple decay. I'm always curious about the initial reactions to such a baffling anomaly. Dr. Aris Thorne, bless his rigorously scientific mind, initially proposed every mundane explanation imaginable. Catastrophic plague that somehow left no physical trace? A sudden environmental collapse that dissolved all organic matter? A mass exodus? But each theory crumbled under the weight of the city's pristine condition and the sheer completeness of the void. There are no signs of a hurried departure, no abandoned meals, no half-packed belongings, no evidence of panic or struggle. The city is immaculate, as if prepared for a grand unveiling, not a hasty abandonment. This raises a chilling possibility, doesn't it? What if the vanishing wasn't a tragedy but a transition? What if the inhabitants of this pre-flood supercity didn't die or flee, but rather transcended? It's a wild idea, I know, bordering on science fiction, but when you're standing in a city built with technology that defies our current understanding, where the very walls hum with a dormant intelligence, where the central spire pulses with coherent energy, you start to consider the truly extraordinary. Imagine a civilization so advanced, so utterly in command of matter and energy, that they mastered not just their environment, but their very forms. Could they have reached a point where physical bodies were no longer a necessity? Could they have shed their corporeal forms, perhaps merging with the city's own network or ascending to a different plane of existence? The concept is mind-bending, but the sheer lack of physical remains forces us to confront it. The spire, we believe, holds the key. We've already speculated it's the city's heart and brain, its energy source, its neural network. But what if its function was even more fundamental? What if it was the instrument of this great vanishing? We've detected complex multi-layered energy patterns emanating from it, patterns that seem to interact with the city's responsive architecture in ways we're only beginning to decipher. Could those patterns have facilitated a collective, orchestrated transformation? The city itself feels like a monument to potential, a testament to what humanity could be. It's designed for seamless integration, for an existence free from the mundane constraints of our world. Its self-regulating systems, its internal food cultivation, its climate control, all point to a society that had achieved a profound harmony with its environment and perhaps with itself. If they built a city so perfect, so self-sustaining, why would they abandon it in haste? It stands to reason that their departure, if it occurred, was as deliberate and sophisticated as their construction. Quote 14. Dr. Thorne mused during one of our secure video conferences, his voice hushed, his usual scientific detachment replaced by an almost reverent awe. Quote 15. A launch sequence. The phrase hung in the air, heavy with implication. Was this city an ark, not in the traditional sense of carrying life away from a flood, but an ark designed to transport consciousness, or a new form of being beyond the physical realm? Could they have foreseen the coming catastrophe, the great flood, and prepared not for survival on Earth, but for departure from it? This challenges our most fundamental understanding of human history and evolution. We've always envisioned our past as a linear progression, from primitive hunter-gatherers to agrarian societies, then to industrialization, and now the digital age. But Alpha 01 shatters that timeline. It suggests a pre-flood civilization that achieved a level of technological and perhaps even spiritual advancement that we're only now beginning to conceptualize. It pushes the very boundaries of what quote 16 sect means. Were these beings truly Homo sapiens, as we define ourselves, or an earlier, perhaps more evolved branch of humanity that took a different path? The implications are staggering. If this super city was once teeming with life, if its inhabitants truly achieved some form of transcendence or departure, what does that say about our own potential? Are we merely relearning lessons forgotten? Are we striving towards a future that was in fact an ancient past? The thought is both humbling and exhilarating. It suggests that the stories of gods walking among men, of celestial chariots, of mythical golden ages, might not have been mere fables, but echoes of a profound reality. The secrecy surrounding Site Alpha 01, as you can imagine, is paramount. Governments and scientific bodies globally are struggling to process this discovery. The public revelation of a pre-flood super city, built with impossible technology, whose inhabitants simply vanished, would undoubtedly trigger a global paradigm shift of unprecedented scale. It would force a complete re-evaluation of every religious text, every historical timeline, every scientific theory about human origins. The potential for societal upheaval, for a crisis of faith and identity, is immense. We find ourselves at a precipice, staring into an abyss of lost history. The city, dormant yet alive, waits patiently beneath the waves, a silent sentinel guarding secrets that could redefine humanity. It's a testament to a time when our ancestors, or a humanity, achieved wonders we can barely dream of. But it's also a stark reminder of what can be lost, what can be forgotten, swept away by the tides of time and cataclysm. The questions multiply faster than the answers, each new discovery in Alpha 01 peeling back another layer of our ignorance. Who were they? What did they know? And perhaps most urgently, where did they go? And could they ever return? We are no longer just archaeologists. We are detectives of the impossible, piecing together the fragments of a world that never should have existed, yet undeniably does. And the greatest mystery of all might not be their vanishing, but what they left behind for us to find, and what lessons we are meant to learn from their silent, empty city. The silence of Site Alpha 01 is, perhaps, its loudest declaration. It screams of absence, of a cataclysmic transformation that left behind only the echoes of a civilization too advanced for our current comprehension. We've described the towering spire, the city's heart and hypothesized engine of transcendence, pulsing with those coherent, fractal energy patterns. But what does it mean to pulse? What is a quote 17 when there's no visible ship, no destination we can chart? For Dr. Aris Thorne, a man whose career was built on the immutable laws of geology and physics, these questions have become an obsession. He's spent countless hours poring over the spire's energy readings, the data streaming from the array of custom-built sensors now embedded in the central plaza and along the spire's base. What he's observing isn't just a steady thrum, it's a symphony of calculated rhythmic fluctuations. Imagine a vast, invisible pendulum swinging through unseen dimensions, its arc meticulously calibrated. The energy output isn't constant. It ebbs and flows, not randomly, but in incredibly complex repeating cycles that span hours, days, even weeks. It's like watching a cosmic clock tick, each oscillation a fraction of a larger unknown process. We initially theorized this energy was the city's power source, its lifeblood, and it is, in a way. But Thorne now believes it's more akin to a biological process, a metabolic rhythm for an organism of unimaginable scale. He calls it bioenergetic resonance. The spire, he argues, isn't merely generating power, it's processing something, perhaps even storing information, or consciousness itself. We've detected minute gravitational fluctuations coinciding with these energy pulses, shifts so subtle they almost defy detection, yet undeniably present. Are we witnessing the slow, deliberate unfolding of a process that transcends our understanding of space-time? Is the spire not just a machine, but a living, breathing entity, a colossal, petrified tree whose roots delve into the very fabric of reality? This leads us back to the city's, quote 19, those luminous shifting patterns on the walls. They're not decorative, they're responsive. As our ROVs, and now limited human teams, navigate the pristine corridors, the ambient light subtly changes, the patterns shift and flow, often mirroring the movements within the chamber. It's not a crude motion sensor, it's far more nuanced, almost intuitive. In some areas, particularly around the residential units, the walls seem to anticipate our presence, brightening slightly before we even enter. It's as if the city itself is aware, a vast distributed consciousness observing its unexpected visitors. Could the entire city be a single, integrated mind, a collective intelligence woven into the very architecture, with the spire acting as its central processing unit, its, quote 20, if the inhabitants truly, quote 21, shedding their physical forms, where did they go? Did they merge with this network, their individual consciousnesses becoming threads in a larger digital tapestry? The implications are staggering. We're not just exploring an ancient ruin. We might be walking through the preserved synapses of a forgotten civilization's collective mind. The question then becomes, can we communicate with it? Can we even understand the language of light and energy that courses through its veins? Dr. Thorne has overseen experiments involving carefully calibrated light frequencies and subtle electromagnetic pulses directed at the wall patterns. The results are inconclusive, yet intriguing. Sometimes, the patterns seem to intensify, to ripple with greater complexity. Other times they simply absorb the input, offering no discernible response. It's like trying to have a conversation with a supercomputer using only smoke signals. The deepest mystery, however, remains the complete absence of any physical trace of the inhabitants. No bones, no tools, no personal effects, not even dust. This isn't just a riddle, it's a paradigm-shattering void. It defies every archaeological principle we hold dear. If they vanished utterly. And this has led us to the most pressing objective of the current expedition, the search for a record, a library, an archive, anything that explains who they were, what they achieved, and why they left. In a city where architecture is fluid and responsive, where technology is indistinguishable from magic, what would a repository of knowledge look like? We're not expecting clay tablets or papyrus scrolls, or even data drives as we understand them. Our teams have been meticulously scanning every surface, every chamber, searching for anomalies, for sections that might differ from the seamless living architecture. And then, about 3 weeks ago, deep within a section of the city previously designated, quote 22, a vast multi-tiered chamber radiating outwards from the spire's base. They found it. Not a room filled with books, but a chamber that is the book. Imagine a space where the floor, walls and ceiling are not merely surfaces, but shimmering translucent panels of the composite material, subtly shifting within a light. As the ROVs approached, a central pillar, previously unnoticed due to its perfect integration, began to glow with a soft internal luminescence. And as the ROVs entered the chamber, the entire space came alive. The panels began to project images, not onto a screen, but into the space itself, holographic and three-dimensional, perfectly rendered in light. These weren't static images, they were dynamic, flowing narratives, sequences of what appeared to be mathematical equations, then intricate biological structures, then celestial maps, then what could only be described as architectural schematics of the city itself, rendered in exquisite detail. It was overwhelming, a torrent of information presented not as text, but as pure, experiential data. Dr. Thorne, observing from the control room, described it as, quote, 23. This, quote, 24, as it's been tentatively named, is unlike anything we've ever encountered. It doesn't require an interface. It seems to respond to presence, to observation. The projections shift and cycle, sometimes moving slowly, sometimes flashing with incredible speed. It's as if the city is attempting to download its entire history, its entire understanding of the cosmos, directly into the minds of those present. But the sheer volume and alien nature of the information make deciphering it a monumental task. We're like infants trying to comprehend a quantum physics textbook. What we can discern, even in these early stages, is revolutionary. The mathematical models hint at an understanding of universal constants that makes our current physics look rudimentary. The biological sequences suggest genetic manipulation, perhaps even the engineering of life forms, far beyond our current capabilities, and the celestial maps. They depict constellations and astronomical phenomena that do not perfectly align with our present-day sky, hinting at either a vastly different observational perspective or a time so ancient that the heavens themselves have shifted. This discovery has only amplified the urgency and the secrecy surrounding Site Alpha 01, the international consortium overseeing the excavation, a coalition of the world's leading scientific and governmental bodies, has tightened security protocols to an unprecedented degree. The site is now under constant surveillance, both overt and covert. Every piece of data, every observation, is meticulously catalogued and analysed by a select few. The potential for societal upheaval, for a global crisis of faith and identity, is too immense to risk a premature or uncontrolled leak. We're talking about rewriting not just history books, but sacred texts, philosophical treatises, and the very narrative of human progress. The prevailing scientific and theological models posit a linear progression of humanity, from primitive hunter-gatherers to agricultural societies, to industrialization, and finally to our modern technological age. But Site Alpha 01, this supercity beneath the waves, screams of an alternate past, a forgotten peak of civilization that existed before the deluge, before the reset. It suggests that humanity, or at least a branch of it, once reached heights we're only now beginning to dream of, only to vanish without a trace. What does this mean for us, for humanity today? Are we merely rediscovering a lost inheritance? Or are we confronting a mirror, reflecting a potential future or a potential failure. The knowledge chamber is a tantalizing glimpse into a world of impossible technology and profound understanding. It tells us that what we consider, quote 25, was anything but primitive. As Dr. Thorne observed the latest holographic projections from the knowledge chamber, his face a mixture of awe and bewilderment, he whispered into his comms, quote 26, "The city remains silent, its mysteries slowly yielding to our relentless inquiry. But every answer we uncover only leads to a dozen more questions. We are not just excavating a city, we are excavating the very definition of humanity, challenging every assumption, every dogma. And as the light patterns dance in the knowledge chamber, telling stories beyond our current grasp, we can't help but wonder, what other truths are hidden within these walls, waiting for us to evolve enough to comprehend them? And what did the inhabitants learn that led them to transcend, to leave behind a city so magnificent, yet utterly devoid of life? The answers, we suspect, lie somewhere between the quantum fluctuations of the spire and the holographic narratives of the knowledge chamber, waiting to redefine everything we thought we knew. The knowledge chamber. Even the name felt inadequate, a mere human label for something that defied every category we possessed. It wasn't a library, nor a museum, nor even a supercomputer. It was a living, breathing repository of an entire civilization's consciousness, manifested in light and energy. We had seen glimpses, mere flickers, but the deeper we delved, the more profoundly we understood that what lay before us wasn't just information. It was a world view, a paradigm shift so monumental it threatened to shatter everything we thought we knew about existence itself. Imagine, if you will, stepping into a space where every surface is a dynamic projection, where light isn't just illuminating data, but is the data. The chamber pulsed with a soft ethereal glow, emanating from the hexagonal tiles of the floor, diffusing through the composite walls and coalescing into breathtaking three-dimensional narratives that floated in the air around us. These weren't static images. They were interactive, responsive to our presence, shifting and reorganizing as if anticipating our questions. Dr. Thorne, always the pragmatist, was initially focused on the how. How was this energy generated? How was the information stored? But even he, with his rigorous scientific discipline, found himself increasingly drawn into the what. What we were witnessing was a curriculum, an encyclopedia, a history, and a prophecy all rolled into one. The initial projections detailed mathematical theorems so elegant and complex they made our most advanced quantum physics look like child's play. They described geometries that transcended Euclidean space, illustrating dimensions we could only conceptualize abstractly, if at all. We saw structures that folded space and time, not as theoretical constructs, but as fundamental principles of engineering. Was this how the city was built? Was this the blueprint for its impossible materials, its self-repairing mechanisms, its seemingly infinite energy? The implication was staggering. They didn't just understand the universe, they manipulated its very fabric. Then came the biological data. It wasn't a simple DNA helix or a cellular diagram. These were intricate, evolving systems, presented as shimmering, multi-layered holograms that showcased life forms of breathtaking diversity and complexity. We saw genetic pathways that seemed to weave consciousness directly into biological structures, illustrating processes of cellular regeneration and transformation that bordered on the alchemical. There were sequences depicting the growth and development of beings whose forms were fluid, adaptive, and utterly alien, yet undeniably alive. And then, most chillingly, we began to see what we suspected were the inhabitants themselves, not in fixed forms, but in states of constant flux, evolving, merging, transforming. It was less about individual organisms and more about a collective, interconnected biological network, hinting at a state of being far beyond our understanding of individuality or even species. Could this be the visual representation of their metamorphosis, their transcendence, a deliberate chosen evolution rather than a catastrophic disappearance? But it was the celestial maps that truly unmoored us, shaking the very foundations of our cosmological understanding. These weren't just star charts, they were dynamic, three-dimensional models of constellations, nebulae, and galactic clusters, rendered with an impossible precision. They showed planetary systems, orbital mechanics, and stellar life cycles playing out in miniature, all around us. The beauty was overwhelming, but the implications were terrifying. "Look closer," Dr. Thorne had murmured, his voice barely a whisper, as one particular sequence began to loop. It was a depiction of our own solar system, but subtly, profoundly wrong. The orbital paths were similar, yes, but the placement of major celestial bodies, the number of moons around certain planets, even the spectral signatures of distant nebulae, they were all subtly, yet undeniably different from any astronomical record we possess. "This isn't our sky, not as we know it now," he stated, the realization dawning on all of us. "Not as it has been for millennia." Here's the question that hammered at us. What did this mean? Was it a map of a different epoch, a time before some cosmic event reshaped our heavens? Did the cataclysm of the flood, which we always assumed was a terrestrial event, have a celestial component we never imagined? Or, and this was the truly mind-bending possibility, were these maps not of our universe at all, but of another? Did the inhabitants of Alpha 01 possess the means to observe, or even traverse, other realities? The thought was intoxicating, terrifying, and utterly paradigm-shifting. It suggested a level of cosmic awareness and technological prowess that made our space programs look like children playing with sandcastles. The team, a cohort of the brightest minds from various fields, astrophysics, ancient languages, though no language was present here, only pure information, theoretical physics, and even philosophy, found themselves grappling with an existential crisis. How do you translate a concept that has no equivalent in your own culture, your own science, your own consciousness? We were trying to read a universal language, but one written in a dialect so advanced it felt like trying to comprehend a symphony played by a galaxy. Dr. Thorne, ever the anchor, began to theorize that the knowledge chamber wasn't just an archive, it was a gateway. Quote, 32. He'd explained during a rare moment of respite, the holographic projection still swirling around us like silent luminous ghosts. The spire, its bioenergetic resonance, the minute gravitational fluctuations. We hypothesized it was processing or storing consciousness. What if this chamber is the interface? What if the spire is the engine, and this is the display, the instruction manual for what they became? The idea resonated with a terrifying logic. If the inhabitants had undergone a collective metamorphosis, a transcendence, then this chamber might not just be telling us what they knew, but how they did it, and perhaps where they went. Was the knowledge itself a tool for their transformation? Was their advanced understanding of mathematics and biology not just for building a city, but for reshaping their very essence? These celestial maps, then, could be navigational charts, not for physical ships through space, but for consciousness through dimensions. The city, meanwhile, seemed to hum with a heightened awareness around the knowledge chamber. The ambient light of Alpha 01's corridors, usually a soft, steady luminescence, seemed to subtly brighten and dim in response to the projections within the chamber. The faint rhythmic pulse that emanated from the spire, which we had meticulously mapped, seemed to subtly shift its frequency, as if the city itself was listening, processing, perhaps even reacting to our attempts to decipher its ultimate secrets. It reinforced the unnerving feeling that Alpha 01 was not merely an abandoned ruin, but a dormant entity, waiting for what? For us to understand? For us to activate something? The weight of this discovery was immense, almost crushing. We were the first, perhaps the only humans in millennia to stand amidst these revelations. The international consortium, with its tight grip on secrecy, was constantly demanding updates, yet simultaneously struggling to comprehend the implications of our reports. They understood the potential for global upheaval, the shattering of religious dogma, the collapse of historical narratives, but they couldn't grasp the sheer, mind-bending scale of the knowledge we were uncovering. How do you explain that humanity might not be the pinnacle of intelligence, but merely a nascent species, still fumbling in the cosmic dark, while a previous civilization built a city that could transcend reality itself? We were beginning to piece together a narrative, not from written words, but from the elegant dance of light and information. It spoke of a civilization that had mastered not just their physical environment, but their biological and conscious evolution. It hinted at a profound understanding of the universe that saw no boundaries between science and spirituality, between matter and energy, between life and pure information. They didn't just build a city, they engineered a path to a new state of being. And the celestial maps, the ones that didn't match our sky, they might not be a historical record of our past, but a navigational guide to their future, a destination beyond our current perception. As Dr. Thorne and his team pored over the ever-unfolding holographic narratives, a new sequence began to project itself, distinct from the others. It was less about pure data and more about a narrative, a story told through symbols and evolving forms. It depicted a grand, sweeping transformation, culminating in what appeared to be a convergence of consciousness, an ascent into a realm of pure energy, and at its core a recurring motif, a single, resonant frequency, a specific harmonic pattern that seemed to emanate directly from the spire itself. It wasn't just information anymore, it felt like an invitation, or perhaps a final instruction. The city was not just showing us what they were and knew, it was showing us what they became. And the chilling question that lingered in the frigid, silent depths of Alpha 01 was, were we meant to follow, or were we merely meant to bear witness? The next step, we knew, would involve not just observation, but active engagement with this final, profound mystery. The harmonic pattern, emanating from the knowledge chamber and resonating with the very core frequency of the spire, wasn't just a sound. It was an information packet, a complex fractal of energy that seemed to hum directly in our bones. Dr. Thorne, his face a mask of awe and disbelief, had called it an invitation. But an invitation to what? And more critically, for whom? We've always imagined the Garden of Eden as a place of innocence, a pristine landscape where humanity first walked with divinity. Yet, what we were witnessing deep beneath the Persian Gulf was something far more sophisticated, more audacious. This wasn't just a garden, it was a launch pad, and the quote 35 felt less like a gentle beckoning and more like the final critical instruction in a grand pre-programmed sequence. Imagine, if you will, standing before a portal that promises to redefine your very existence. That's the psychological space we found ourselves in. The consortium, already grappling with the implications of an entire pre-flood super-civilization, was now faced with a phenomenon that shattered every known paradigm of life, death, and consciousness. The secrecy surrounding Site Alpha 01 tightened further, the air thick with an unspoken fear, not just of public panic, but of the profound existential crisis this, quote, 36, presented. If the inhabitants of Eden had indeed transcended their physical forms, ascending to a state of pure energy or consciousness, what did that say about our linear progression, our struggles, our very definition of humanity? Dr. Thorne, of course, was galvanized. His initial skepticism had long since evaporated, replaced by a fierce, almost spiritual drive to decipher this ultimate mystery. He spent countless hours in the knowledge chamber, now a pulsating beacon of light and information, trying to isolate and analyze every nuance of the harmonic pattern. His team, a hand-picked group of physicists, linguists, and even theoretical theologians, worked alongside him, their faces illuminated by the holographic projections that danced around them, a symphony of mathematics, biology, and celestial mechanics. Quote 37. Thorne explained during one of our secure video conferences, his voice strained but alight with discovery. Quote 38. He paused, running a hand through his already dishevelled hair. Quote 39. This was the chilling part. The city, dormant for millennia, was not just a monument to a forgotten past. It was an active system, a perfectly preserved chrysalis waiting for the right conditions, or perhaps the right audience. The spire, that towering crystalline structure at the city's heart, had always been the linchpin of Thorne's theories. Now, with the Aida quote 40 harmonic echoing through the chamber, the spire's subtle gravitational fluctuations became more pronounced, its bioenergetic resonance strengthening. It was as if the city's central engine was warming up, responding to the played sequence. New data streamed in from the sub-bottom profiling sonar and the myriad of sensors embedded throughout the city. The glowing hexagonal tiles of the central plaza, previously displaying only ambient patterns, now began to pulse in sync with the spire's increased activity. The walls, composed of that impossible self-healing composite material, shifted their luminescent patterns with a newfound complexity, almost like an internal dialogue unfolding. We were no longer just observing a ruin. We were interacting with a living, breathing, ancient intelligence. Thorne theorized that the entire city was an ascension protocol writ large. The knowledge chamber was the interface, providing the necessary theoretical framework, the advanced mathematics for manipulating space-time, the biological engineering for transforming physical form, the celestial maps for charting a new trajectory. The spire was the engine, the power source, and the navigational beacon. and the city itself, with its responsive architecture and distributed consciousness, was the conduit. But what about the inhabitants? The complete absence of any physical trace remained the most perplexing riddle. If this was an ark for consciousness, what happened to the physical vessels? Thorne, ever the pragmatist, offered a grim yet scientifically plausible hypothesis. If the goal was a complete transformation, a shedding of the physical, then the city itself might have been designed to facilitate that. Imagine a system that could not only transform consciousness, but also efficiently reclaim and repurpose all organic matter, leaving no trace. A perfect closed-loop system for transcendence. It's a disturbing thought, isn't it? That the very ground beneath our feet, the composite material we were carefully sampling, might have once been the processing agent for an entire civilization's physical being. The implications were staggering. Were we looking at a sophisticated form of ritualistic self-euthanasia, or the ultimate evolution of a species? The consortium's internal debates grew increasingly heated. Some argued for immediate suppression of the invitation, fearing that any attempt to understand or replicate it could lead to global catastrophe or widespread psychological collapse. Others, a more adventurous faction, saw it as humanity's ultimate opportunity, a chance to bypass millennia of slow evolution and leap into an entirely new state of being. What if this isn't just an invitation? One of the consortium's leading ethicists posited, his voice tight with barely contained fear. But a test? A trial for a species deemed worthy of the next step? And what if we fail? Thorne, however, was focused on the science. He believed the invitation was a key, a specific harmonic sequence that, when properly understood and perhaps even replicated, could unlock further stages of the Ascension Protocol. He was determined to find out what happened next. Was there a reciprocal frequency, a password, a sequence of actions required to truly engage with the city's primary function? We began to notice subtle shifts in the knowledge chamber's projections. While still displaying the complex data, a new, almost instructional overlay began to appear. It wasn't a language we understood, not in a linguistic sense, but rather a sequence of energetic flows, spatial manipulations, and bioresonant frequencies that seemed to map out a process, a pathway. It was as if the city was slowly, methodically, revealing the steps to what its creators had achieved. The urgency was palpable. We were standing on the precipice of a discovery that could either elevate humanity to an unimaginable new plane of existence or plunge us into an abyss of philosophical despair and self-destruction. The question wasn't just what the inhabitants of Eden had become, but if we, modern humanity, were capable of following them, and perhaps, more terrifyingly, if we should. Thorne's next move was audacious. He proposed attempting to broadcast the harmonic pattern, not just observe it, to send it back to the spire, to the city itself, to see if the invitation truly was a two-way street. The risks were immense. What if it triggered something irreversible? What if it awakened a dormant consciousness within the city that was not benevolent? But the allure of unlocking such profound knowledge was too strong to resist. The world unknowingly held its breath as Dr. Aris Thorne prepared to respond to an invitation extended across 10 millennia, a call from a super city built by beings who had learned to shed their very forms. The moment of truth, it seemed, was almost upon us. The air in the Alpha 01 command center deep beneath the waves was thick with a silence that screamed louder than any alarm. Dr. Thorne's proposal to broadcast the harmonic pattern, the invitation back to the spire, hung in the chilled, oxygen-enriched atmosphere like a dare issued to the very fabric of existence. We've always been drawn to the edge, haven't we? To the precipice of the unknown, despite every instinct for self-preservation. This wasn't just a scientific experiment, it was an act of profound, almost spiritual audacity. Quote 50. Admiral Ramirez, a man whose career had been built on calculated risks and predictable outcomes, finally broke the quiet. His voice, usually a steady rumble, was laced with an uncharacteristic tremor. Quote 51. And he wasn't wrong. Our sensors, hypersensitive and painstakingly calibrated, had consistently registered fluctuating energy fields emanating from the spire, complex and coherent, yet utterly alien. To intentionally provoke a response, to send a signal into that ancient slumbering intelligence, it was a gamble of unprecedented proportions. What if we triggered a cascade failure? What if the city, in its quote 52, saw us as an invasive presence? Or worse, what if it simply ignored us, proving our entire hypothesis of intelligent design and conscious transformation to be nothing more than an elaborate scientific fantasy? Quote 53. Thorne countered, his gaze unwavering, fixed somewhere beyond the holographic projections of the city, as if already seeing the future. Quote 54. His words resonated. They resonated not just with the scientists, whose thirst for understanding was insatiable, but also, we suspect, with the more pragmatic minds in the consortium. The global implications of not knowing were perhaps even greater than the risks of discovery. Imagine trying to explain to a waiting world that we found the Garden of Eden, a super city built by an impossibly advanced pre-flood civilization, and then simply left its ultimate secret untouched because we were afraid? The narrative alone would be impossible to control. Secrecy, in this case, demanded answers, even dangerous ones. The debate raged for what felt like an eternity, though in reality it was a compressed, intense period of hours. We dissected every possible scenario, every contingency. We modelled potential energy surges, simulated structural responses, and even speculated on the philosophical and theological fallout. The core question remained, what if the city, or whatever intelligence resided within it, was still active? What if it was waiting? Ultimately, the decision was made, not without dissent, not without a chilling awareness of the precipice we were balancing on, but with a collective, almost primal, drive to know. The harmonic pattern, meticulously recorded and analysed from the knowledge chamber, would be broadcast. The preparations were meticulous, bordering on ritualistic. Redundant systems were put in place for power, data acquisition, and emergency shutdowns. Specialized acoustic emitters, designed to project frequencies with unparalleled precision through the dense medium of water, were positioned directly facing the spire, just meters from its crystalline surface. We were using our most advanced technology to communicate with something that was, by all appearances, infinitely more advanced. The irony was not lost on us. Dr. Anya Sharma, the lead acoustical engineer, oversaw the calibration with a laser-like focus, her brow furrowed in concentration. Quote 55, she explained, her voice tight with professional tension. Quote 56. Thorne moved through the command center, a silent, almost spectral presence. He checked the readouts from the spire's energy monitors, the environmental sensors, the structural integrity diagnostics of the city itself. He was looking for anomalies, for anything that might suggest an impending reaction. Before we even initiated the broadcast, the city remained inert, magnificent in its silent vigil. The tension was palpable, a live current running through every soul present. We were about to perform an act of communication across millennia, across species, perhaps even across dimensions. It felt like standing at the edge of a cosmic switchboard, about to press a button labelled Unknown. "All systems ready, Dr. Thorne," Anya's voice cut through the hum of machinery, startlingly clear. Thorne nodded, stepping forward to the main console. His hand hovered over the activation sequence. "Quote, 59, he ordered, his voice steady, betraying none of the immense pressure weighing on him. Quote, 60. The synthesized voice of the system echoed through the command center, each digit a hammer blow against the silence. We watched the main holographic projection of the city, our eyes fixed on the towering spire, on the knowledge chamber, on every luminous detail of the ancient metropolis. Would it flicker? Would it surge? Would it simply do nothing? Quote, 61. A low resonant hum filled the chamber, not from the speakers, but from the very air around us. On the main screen, a ripple of shimmering light, almost imperceptible at first, emanated from the acoustic emitters, travelling through the water towards the spire. It was a wave of pure, coherent energy, a digitized echo of the ancient invitation. For a long, agonizing moment, nothing happened. The spire remained as it always had, a monumental crystal of contained energy, pulsing with its familiar complex rhythms. The hexagonal tiles of the central plaza continued their slow, mesmerizing ebb and flow of light. The knowledge chamber's projections cycled through their cosmic ballet of mathematics and celestial maps. Then it began, not with a bang, but with a breath, a subtle, almost imperceptible deepening of the spire's internal light. The complex patterns within its crystalline structure, previously a mesmerizing display of contained power, now seemed to intensify, their movements becoming more fluid, more purposeful. It was as if the spire had just taken a slow, deliberate inhale. A collective gasp swept through the command center. Thorne leaned closer to the console, his eyes scanning the new data flooding the screens. Quote, 62, he murmured, almost to himself. Quote, 63. But the most profound change wasn't in the spire itself, not initially. Our eyes were drawn, as if by an invisible hand, to the knowledge chamber, the vast cavernous space which had